see all of you today. I had an opportunity to practice principles today because when I left Jeff City, it was a torrential downpour. And I'm thinking to myself, am I going to drive all the way? You know, it's 50 miles. And it takes me about an hour if I can cook along my normal pace, and it was torrential. So I thought people were going about 55, and if I go 55, it's going to take me an hour and a half. So I started practicing principles that I preach. You know, if you don't practice what you preach, then you're in trouble, right? So I said, thank you for my windshield wiper source. Thank you, God, for my windshield wipers. Thank you that I have a full tank of gas. Thank you that I can see at least a few feet in front of me. Thank you that no one's passing me because I was going a little faster than those people. Thank you for my new front tires. Thank you, thank you. I am so grateful. I cannot wait to see the faces of those people that are going to be greeting me with big smiles. And about 10 miles outside of Eldon, the clouds broke and it was perfectly clear and sunny. So I practiced and it worked. I'm sure I had everything to do with that. Aren't you? Yeah. So today we're going to be continuing with our series on visioning into our 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And we've been using focusing on some of our early, not necessarily early, but New Thought leaders. And I've been focusing on some of the women because they were so instrumental, especially in influencing people like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful person, Ella Wheeler Wilcox. How many of you have heard of her before? She was a wonderful poet, author, and a real leader in New Thought, and a real dynamic, interesting person. There she is in her, hold on. She was, born in Wisconsin in 1850. And on a farm, and her father had some failed business ventures. And so very early, she took to poetry and nature, because that's all she had. And eventually, she began writing. She actually published, when she was 14 years old, a poem that was picked up by a magazine out of New York City, which was really unheard of in those days. To make a long story short, she continued writing. And she was mostly into poetry, and she wrote some actually pretty passionate books. And she did not get into New Thought, or what she called mysticism. That was what it was called in those days until she was older. The idea that thought, we have the ability to change our lives through what we think, feel, and how we behave and choices that we make, was considered anti-religious in those days. Are you aware of that? Anti-religious. It was considered part of the occult. So the fact now that there are so many, including Fillmores, that believe that you could change your life, change your circumstances by changing your thoughts, was quite radical at that time. Our affirmation, do we have her affirmation? It's in your bulletin. Is a kind of a long one. Grab a Kleenex. Now we're all better. one that she used a lot, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later. It's kind of wordy. I am love. I'll say it first, and maybe you want to share it with me in a minute. I am love, health, wisdom, cheerfulness, power for good, prosperity, success, usefulness, and opulence. That about covers it, doesn't it? And she felt that if you said this twice a day, kind of in the theme of Catherine Ponder, some of you remember when I spoke about Catherine Ponder, speaking positive every day. Jan, you were saying last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, that you wake up every morning and you have a positive thing that you say for your day. Am I right? So this is that type of thing. And I am love, health, wisdom, cheerfulness, power for good, prosperity, success, usefulness, and opulence. Meaning, whatever I want to have, I can have. I can be opulent. Share it with me if you'd like. I am love, health, wisdom, cheerfulness, power for good, prosperity, success, usefulness, and opulence. And that is actually nothing new to New Thought, really, is it? It's what we've heard so many different times before. I want to share with you today some of her thoughts. She wrote a book called The Heart of the New Thought. That's the title of the lesson today. The Heart of the New Thought. And she spoke in 1902 in Chicago on November 2nd to a huge auditorium of people who were hungry to learn about New Thought. And I'm so glad you're here. I wish we had an auditorium of 100 right here or 60 right here. I believe this. I got this morning in my meditation time, that the world is ready again over and over to hear more and more of what we know and what we have to say, particularly in these challenging times. And if you feel that way, that we're on the cutting edge. We're on the leading edge. Abraham Hicks, if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks at all, says, we are leading edge thinkers. We're really not leading edge thinkers because this has been thought for a very long time. This goes back to the days of Jesus, our way shower at Unity. Jesus taught all these things, not quite this way. Of course, he spoke in Aramaic, and Jesus supposedly spoke several languages, so it was difficult often to translate all of his work. I learned this when I took my coursework at Unity Village. I'll share a few of her thoughts that she gave in that lecture that she did November 2nd. And it was a lecture, she was doing it for the new year, November and December, for the new year in Chicago to a large auditorium of people. Every thought, word, and deed is helping decide your next place in the Creator's magnificent universe. People are having difficulty hearing. Can you turn it up? How's that? Any better?
Yes.
Better? Keep it real high. Okay. All right. I don't want you to miss a word. Every thought, word, and deed is helping decide your next place in the Creator's magnificent universe. You will be beautiful or ugly, wise or ignorant, fortunate or unfortunate, according to what use you make of yourself here and now. Sounds like a lot that we're familiar with, doesn't it? She didn't mince any words, though, did she? Unselfish thoughts, training your mind to desire only universal good, and so on, will not result in what you want that will bring you happiness, will bring you fulfillment in this world. Each one of us is a needed part of God's great plan. Some people shy away from that thought today. It's got to be source, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. It is God's great plan. It is the divine energy. It is the plan of all that we cannot see, touch, or feel, but we know resides within us. Each one of us is a needed part of that. Let each soul say, He has need for me, or I would not be. I am here to strengthen the plan. Remember that in your most discouraged hours, always remember, you are here for a reason. And the reason is to carry out the plan, which is to spread good and encouragement and joy to all of those that you meet. And then when you do this, this is the cool part of vibration and the law of attraction, which we talked about so much. The more I express gratitude for, the more will come to me to be grateful for. You get that, don't you? So the more you encourage someone else, the more encouragement will come to you. The more creative you are here, the more creative thoughts will come back to you. It's the law of attraction. That which is like unto itself is drawn. She talks a lot actually, about not spending time with people who are negative and who do not understand what you know, and not listening or gravitating toward that. And I think sometimes we tend, especially in unity, to just say anything goes. But it is also important, and I do agree with her, that when you are in a situation that is not to your best, or you in your best good, that you can move yourself away from it. She also says, put in your good positive words and then leave. How many times have you done that? You put in that good word and then you walk away from the situation. And I believe that's very true. She says, if you have that coming into your life too much, if you have too much negativity. I had this experience the other day. What day was it? Friday. I had a doctor's appointment, which was wonderful. I went in knowing that everything was going to be wonderful. There were some results from some of the tests and so on that had been done. And my doctor, a woman, she's wonderful. Her attitude was so different than it had been before. And so we had this great conversation, and I went from there a couple other places. And then I got this idea that people were really kind of crabby. Have you been noticing that? I think people are tired of masks, and I think they're tired of social distancing, and I think they're tired of lines and 6 feet, and I kept asking myself, because we know law of attraction, that which is like unto itself, right, is drawn. Is it me today? Is it me today? So I had that experience when I went into Staples, and I was like, wow, what am I projecting today? But I don't know if it was that. I think it was simply people are a little weary right now. Yesterday, it was Saturday, I went to the farmer's market in Jefferson City, and a nice gathering of farmers and bought all kinds of wonderful produce. And everybody was happy, and everybody was upbeat, and everybody wanted to chat. So I think it might have just been that situation. But they weren't, I'll have to say, they weren't wearing masks. They were all social distance, but they know each other, and they were talking across the aisle to each other, and everybody was happy to be bringing their vegetables and bringing their pork and bringing their food, and I had a wonderful time. So my point is, when we're in that place of spiritual awareness, we're always asking, how am I right now? Do you do that to yourself? Or is it just me? Do you ask yourself, am I in a good spot right now? I'm in a good vibration right now. I'm not getting the best feedback. And then I come to find out there were situations where certain things were out of my control and I had nothing to do with. My point is that awareness is key. She says if you get too much negative feedback, if you're not getting the right stuff, she said, you might want to take a look at yourself, which I did. And here she has the poem for it, one of her wonderful poems. Are you hearing me okay? Are you hearing me okay? You can never tell what your thoughts will do. I'll try to say it how I know she would have said it in Chicago. In bringing you hate or love, for thoughts are things, and their airy wings are swift as a carrier dove. They follow the law of the universe. Each thing must create its kind, and they speed o'er the track to bring you back whatever went out in your mind. Kind of sums up what we know, doesn't it, about the power of thought. She went on to say, stand firm in the universe. Believe in yourself. We've heard this before, haven't we? We've heard this from so many. Believe in yourself. Self-doubt. Do any of you still struggle with self-doubt? Anybody? I do. Self-doubt. I'll have a wonderful idea about something. And one of the things, I believe they're all divine ideas. Who said that? Our good old buddy Charles Fillmore. Divine ideas, remember? Divine thoughts, divine ideas. I'll get a divine idea, and then I'll perhaps make the mistake of sharing it with someone who says, no, nah. And I go, that sounded really good to me. She says, don't share so much. We've talked about that before, haven't we? Don't share so much. If you have a divine idea, go with it. Go with it. It's your divine idea. Believe in others. I love this. I needed to hear this. If you make a mistake, consider it only an incident. Many of us remember making mistakes as children and being punished or admonished for not having the right answer at the right time. How many of you remember that? I do. Okay, that's in the past. That's in the past. Consider it only an incident. If someone wrongs you, cheats, misuses, or insults you, let it pass as one of the lessons you had to learn. Am I the only one that sometimes feels insulted? Does sometimes someone not understand you the way you want to be understood? You feel insulted? Right? Let it pass. Isn't that what Jesus taught? Let it pass. We're really being pulled. We're really being drawn. I'm teaching this stuff. I've got to practice it. Do not, she says though, believe that you were selected by fate to learn this lesson. We've heard that old adage, haven't we? Keep wholesome, hopeful, and sympathetic with the world at large. I'm going to read that again. Keep wholesome, hopeful, and sympathetic with the world at large. It's a challenging time to do that, isn't it? If you're like me, you can see some things going on and say, how can you done it? People, what is it? Anybody else feel that way sometimes? It's not in our best interest to feel that way. Our best interest is to feel hopeful. To know that there's a divine plan that we have no idea. We're not responsible for it. We're responsible for caring and for seeing hope and seeing it as the possibilities for good. Expect life to use you better every year. And it will not disappoint you in the long run. That's a positive attitude. We went through 6 weeks of positive thinking, and now we've been looking at visioning into our 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, or younger. If you're younger than 40s, you're not excluded today. Sir? Talking to the wonderful gentleman there. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Life is what you make it. We know this. We've heard this for many, many years, haven't we? And she spoke this to a very large crowd. Her talk went on for 1 hour and 55 minutes. And I could just see her in one of her hats and one of her, she always was a lady. Her husband died quite suddenly. And it was after that she really focused in on New Thought. So she had been writing poetry and books. She really focused in on New Thought. And the only reason I mention that is because there's oftentimes a life situation in our own personal lives that sends us on another trajectory, doesn't it? A loss or something unexpected. So that's what set her on that path. Expect life to use you better every year, no matter how old. She says a lot about aging. I don't have time to go into that today. We talked quite a bit about that last week. And she has a lot to say, since we're mostly women here today, about a woman holding her stature and her caring of herself into her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And I think that's important too. Don't allow yourself to think you're too old for anything. For life is what we make it. And so it is.